There's a concept that's crucial to chemistry and physics. It helps explain why physical processes go one way and not the other, why ice melts, why cream spreads in coffee, why air leaks out of a punctured tire. It's entropy, and it's notoriously difficult to wrap our heads around. Entropy is often described as a measurement of disorder. That's a convenient image, but it's unfortunately misleading. For example, which is more disordered? A cup of crushed ice or a glass of room temperature water? Most people would say the ice, but that actually has lower entropy. So here's another way of thinking about it through probability. This may be trickier to understand, but take the time to internalize it and you'll have a much better understanding of entropy. Consider two small solids which are comprised of 6 atomic bonds each. In this model, the energy in each solid is stored in the bonds. Those can be thought of as simple containers, which can hold indivisible units of energy known as quanta. The more energy a solid has, the hotter it is. It turns out that there are numerous ways that the energy can be distributed in the two solids and still have the same total energy in each. Each of these options is called a microstate. For 6 quanta of energy in solid A and 2 in solid B, there are 9,702 microstates. Of course, there are other ways our 8 quanta of energy can be arranged. For example, all of the energy could be in solid A and none in B, or half in A and half in B. If we assume that each microstate is equally likely, we can see that some of the energy configurations have a higher probability of occurring than others. That's due to the greater number of microstates. Entropy is a direct measure of each energy configuration's probability. What we see is that the energy configuration in which the energy is most spread out between the solids has the highest entropy. So, in a general sense, entropy can be thought of as a measurement of this energy spread. Low entropy means the energy is concentrated. High entropy means it's spread out. To see why entropy is useful for explaining spontaneous processes, like hot objects cooling down, we need to look at a dynamic system where the energy moves. In reality, energy doesn't stay put. It continuously moves between neighboring bonds. As the energy moves, the energy configuration can change. Because of the distribution of microstates, there's a 21% chance that the system will later be in the configuration in which the energy is maximally spread out. There's a 13% chance that it will return to its starting point, and an 8% chance that A will actually gain energy. Again, we see that because there are more ways to have dispersed energy and high entropy than concentrated energy, the energy tends to spread out. That's why if you put a hot object next to a cold one, the cold one will warm up and the hot one will cool down. But even in that example, there is an 8% chance that the hot object would get hotter. Why doesn't this ever happen in real life? It's all about the size of the system. Our hypothetical solids only had 6 bonds each. Let's scale the solids up to 6,000 bonds and 8,000 units of energy, and again start the system with 3/4 of the energy in A and 1/4 in B. Now we find that chance of A spontaneously acquiring more energy is this tiny number. Familiar, everyday objects have many times more particles than this. The chance of a hot object in the real world getting hotter is so absurdly small it just never happens. Ice melts, cream mixes in, and tires deflate because these states have more dispersed energy than the originals. There's no mysterious force nudging the system towards higher entropy. It's just that higher entropy is always statistically more likely. That's why entropy has been called time's arrow. If energy has the opportunity to spread out, it will.
Why is your body quietly breaking down right now? Even while you feel perfectly fine, pause on that for a moment. Not in a dramatic way, just honestly. You woke up today, stood up, and your heart kept beating without asking permission. Your eyes focused, your lungs filled, your muscles moved. It felt automatic, reliable, almost guaranteed. But beneath that feeling of stability, something is steadily drifting in the opposite direction. Your cells are not being preserved. They are slowly unraveling. Most of us carry an unspoken belief that living systems are naturally stable, that if we simply avoid obvious harm, our bodies will more or less maintain themselves. That belief feels comforting. It also happens to be wrong. Imagine a house left alone for decades. No storms, no disasters, no fires, just time passing. Paint peels, wood warps, pipes corrode, dust accumulates in places no one notices. Nothing attacked the house, yet it deteriorated anyway. Your body is similar, but far more intricate every second. Countless tiny processes are running inside you, repairing damage, transporting energy, removing waste, rebuilding structures. You are not a static object. You are a maintenance project in constant motion. Here's the quiet insight. Your body doesn't fall apart because something went terribly wrong. It falls apart because keeping order requires continuous effort. Left alone, matter drifts toward disorder. That drift is not a bug in the universe. It is a basic rule of it. Picture a perfectly stacked deck of cards. If you toss the deck in the air, what is the most likely result? Chaos. Cards scatter randomly across the floor. Now imagine trying to make them land neatly stacked by chance. Almost impossible. Order requires intention and energy. Disorder requires nothing. Your cells face the same reality. They are constantly fighting against randomness, repairing DNA, replacing worn proteins, keeping chemical balances precise. For most of your life, they do this astonishingly well, but no system can win that battle forever. Tiny errors accumulate. Repairs become less effective. Structures weaken. That slow drift, it's what we call aging. Now stop and ask, does this actually make sense? Yes. If you think of your body not as a machine built once, but as a process that must be maintained every moment, the moment maintenance slows, decay accelerates. Here is where human thinking gets interesting. We like to believe that progress is natural, that improvement just happens if we wait long enough. In reality, improvement requires more energy, more coordination, more discipline than decline. Your body proves this every day. So does your life. Consider success. Money, your intelligence. People assume that if they work hard and avoid big mistakes, things will naturally get better. But that is the same illusion as believing a house will stay perfect if you simply don't break it. Neglect is not neutral. It is negative. This leads to the first uncomfortable truth about success. Most people don't lose because they are stupid. They lose because they are passive. They react instead of think. They drift instead of decide. In a world where disorder is always pulling things apart, inaction is not safe. It is dangerous. Your body cannot afford passivity. It must constantly act to stay alive. Your finances, relationships, and decisions are no different. Now, think deeper. Why do wealthy people often think differently, even when they don't seem smarter? Not because they are lucky geniuses, but because they instinctively understand maintenance. They know that preserving what you have is harder than earning it in the first place. They avoid obvious stupidity before chasing brilliance. That is inversion. Asking first, how could this go badly, rather than how could this make me rich? Your body practices inversion automatically. Cells don't try to optimize for perfection. They try to prevent catastrophic failure. Blood pressure is regulated not to be ideal, but to stay within safe limits. Temperature is controlled not for comfort, but for survival. Stability beats optimization. Does this actually make sense? Absolutely. Survival is about avoiding collapse, not chasing perfection. Here is the second uncomfortable truth about investing in success. Patience almost always beats intelligence. Brilliant people often ruin themselves by being too active, trading too much, changing strategies too often, reacting emotionally to every fluctuation. Meanwhile, ordinary people who simply stay consistent, avoid disasters, and give time room to work quietly build far more. Your body follows the same logic. Aging is not a single dramatic failure. It is 1,000 tiny stresses accumulating over decades. Slow processes matter more than dramatic moments. Think about opportunity cost, a concept people misunderstand. Every action you take has a hidden price, what you did not do instead. If your cells overreacted to every minor injury, you would be in constant inflammation and die young. So they balance repair with restraint. They choose where to spend energy. In life, most people waste opportunity cost. They chase shiny things, react to fear, or follow crowds without realizing what they are giving up. Peace, time, compound growth, clarity. Your body cannot afford that kind of sloppiness. It must allocate energy wisely or fail. Here is the third uncomfortable truth. And most people lose not because the world is unfair, but because they deceive themselves. They believe comforting stories. I'll start tomorrow. This won't matter. I'm different. I deserve this shortcut. Meanwhile, entropy keeps working quietly in the background. Your body cannot lie to itself. If you poison it, neglect sleep, or overload stress, the consequences arrive whether you believe in them or not. Reality is brutally consistent. Now step back. Aging is not punishment. It is the predictable outcome of a universe that tends toward disorder unless energy is invested to resist it. Life is remarkable precisely because it temporarily creates islands of order in that chaos. Think of yourself like a river flowing downhill. Gravity is always pulling. You can swim against it for a while, but not forever. That doesn't make the effort pointless. It makes it meaningful. Every year you live is a small victory against inevitability. And here is a subtle insight most people miss. Knowing that your body will fail someday does not make life tragic. It makes attention valuable. If time were infinite, nothing would matter because it is not. Your choices gain weight. Ask yourself, does this actually make sense? If nothing ever broke down, nothing would need care. If nothing needed care, nothing would feel precious. Now connect this back to how you live and think. If decay is inevitable, the rational strategy is not panic, denial, or reckless risk. It is slow, steady, thoughtful maintenance. Eat reasonably, sleep consistently, move your body, manage stress, and just as important, manage your mind. Most people obsess over extreme hacks, miracle diets, perfect workouts, secret supplements, but your body, like wealth, grows through boring, consistent behaviors compounded over time. Not flashy decisions, but reliable ones. The same applies to success. People worship talent and dramatic wins, yet ignore the quiet habits that actually determine outcomes. Patience, discipline, clarity, and the ability to avoid obvious mistakes. A simple thought experiment. Imagine two people. One is brilliant, energetic, and impulsive. The other is average, but steady, calm, and careful. Over a year, the brilliant one outperforms. Over a decade, the steady one wins. Over a lifetime, the gap is enormous. That is entity working on behavior. Your body rewards consistency more than intensity. Your life does too. There is another uncomfortable truth here. You are not as in control as you feel. Much of your aging, your health, your outcomes depend on systems far larger than your willpower. Genetics, environment, randomness, timing. Fighting that reality is wasted energy. Understanding it is power. Wealthy thinkers don't obsess over what they cannot control. They build buffers, margins of safety, habits that protect them when things go wrong. Your body does this automatically. Extra fat storage, immune defenses, repair mechanisms. In life, you must design your own margins. So what does all of this mean for how you should live? Not that you should fear decay, not that you should chase immortality, but that you should respect the maintenance of your body, your mind, your relationships, and your decisions. Notice how easily things fall apart if you stop paying attention. A skill fades, a habit slips, a relationship cools, money evaporates. None of it requires catastrophe. Neglect is enough. Now slow down and ask one last time, does this actually make sense? Yes. If the universe drifts toward disorder, then the most valuable human skill is the ability to create and preserve order intentionally in your body, in your thinking, and in your life. Your body will age. That is not a failure. It is the price of being alive in this universe. But within that limit, how you treat that fragile temporary system matters enormously. You are not a machine slowly rusting. You are a process constantly fighting chaos, sometimes winning, sometimes losing, always changing. And here is the reflective truth to sit with. You are not meant to last forever, but you are meant to be cared for while you are here. Not with panic, not with obsession, but with quiet, steady attention. If you take anything from this, let it be this. The world does not reward speed, drama, or brilliance nearly as much as it rewards patience, clarity, and maintenance. Your body proves that every single day. So the next time you notice a gray hair, a slower step, or a tired morning, don't see it as betrayal. See it as evidence that you have been participating in one of the most remarkable struggles in the universe, the temporary creation of order against the tide of chaos. And in that struggle, what you choose to maintain, your health, your thinking, your character, is what truly defines your life. Let's go a layer deeper. Imagine for a moment that your body was completely perfect. No aging, no decay, no entropy. Cells repaired themselves flawlessly. Damage vanished instantly, and nothing ever wore out. At first, that sounds like paradise, but think slowly. If nothing ever degraded, nothing would ever need attention. If nothing ever needed attention, you would never have to care. You wouldn't need sleep, food, or rest. You wouldn't feel pain. You wouldn't feel fatigue. And strangely, you also wouldn't feel urgency, gratitude, or meaning. There would be no reason to act now, because there would be no cost to waiting forever. That thought experiment reveals something subtle. Fragility is not the enemy of meaning. It is the condition that makes meaning possible because your body is temporary. Your choices matter. Now connect this to how people think about success. Most people want outcomes that last forever. Permanent wealth, permanent security, permanent status, but they rarely want to do the maintenance that makes anything durable. They want results without process. They want stability without effort. They want ore without friction. That is exactly the same mistake as believing your body should stay young without care. Here is another uncomfortable truth. Many people secretly believe they deserve good outcomes simply because they want them. They treat reality like a vending machine. Insert desire, receive success. When it doesn't work, they blame luck, unfairness, or other people rather than examining their own habits. Your body does not negotiate this way. It responds to inputs, not wishes. Sleep deprivation leads to decline. Poor nutrition leads to decline. Chronic stress leads to decline. There is no argument, no story, no self-image that can change that. Life works the same way, but people resist this clarity. Think about how most people approach money. They focus on making more promotions, side hustles, investments, but barely think about protecting what they already have. Yet wealth is far more often destroyed than created. A single reckless decision can erase decades of careful work, just like a single unhealthy habit repeated for years can undo much of your physical resilience. This is why careful thinkers focus first on avoiding obvious stupidity, not because they are pessimistic, but because they understand how fragile complex systems are, whether those systems are bodies, businesses, or lives. Ask yourself honestly, does this actually make sense? Yes. If systems tend to break, then the smartest move is to prevent breakage before trying to optimize performance. Now return to your body. Aging is not one big event. It is millions of microscopic events. Slightly damaged DNA here, a misfolded protein there, inflammation creeping up somewhere else. None of these feels dramatic on day one. On year one, you barely notice. On decade 5, the effects are undeniable. Life's biggest outcomes work the same way. Success and failure are rarely born from single moments. They emerge from slow accumulation, habits, small decisions, emotional reactions, tiny compromises repeated again and again. Most people underestimate the power of the small. They chase huge breakthroughs and ignore tiny leaks. Meanwhile, entropy quietly compounds. Here's another uncomfortable truth about success. People overestimate what they can do in 1 year and radically underestimate what they can do in 10. They get impatient, quit early, or blow up their progress chasing shortcut. Your body does not get impatient with growth. It builds slowly, steadily, cell by cell. Bones strengthen through repeated stress. Muscles adapt through gradual training. Brains change through consistent learning. Time is the real architect. Now consider incentives, a quiet but powerful force shaping behavior. Your cells have clear incentives. Stay alive, stay balanced. Avoid catastrophic failure. They do not optimize for beauty or perfection. They optimize for survival. Humans, however, often optimize for the wrong things. Looking good, feeling validated, avoiding discomfort, chasing excitement. These incentives push people towards short-term pleasure and long-term harm. You see this in health. Junk food feels good now, harms later. You see this in money. Risky bets feel thrilling now, devastating later. You see this in relationships. Quick anger feels justified now, destroys trust later. The rational approach is to design your life so your incentives align with long-term stability rather than short-term emotion. Your body already does this. You must consciously learn to do it with your choices. Let's pause again. Does this actually make sense? Yes. If incentives shape behavior, then better outcomes come from better incentive structures, not better intentions. Think about wealthy people again. Not the flashy ones on social media, but the quiet, enduring ones. They are not obsessed with getting rich fast. They are obsessed with not going broke. They build systems that protect them from their own worst impulses, automatic savings, diversified investments, simple lifestyles, long-term thinking. They treat their finances the way your body treats itself with built-in safeguards. Meanwhile, most people trust themselves far too much. They believe they will be disciplined later, wiser tomorrow, calmer in the future. That is self-deception. Entropy loves self-deception. Here is a final uncomfortable truth. Reacting emotionally is one of the most expensive habits a person can have. Anger, fear, envy, and excitement feel powerful, but they almost always lead to poor decisions. Your body reacts emotionally to stress hormones, adrenaline, inflammation, but only in emergencies. If your body lived in constant fight or flight, it would destroy itself quickly. Many people live mentally in constant fight or flight, reacting to every piece of news, every market swing, every social conflict, every perceived slight over time. That mental inflammation erodes judgment, just like physical inflammation erodes health. Now step back and see the pattern. Your body ages because order requires energy and attention. Your life succeeds or fails for the same reason. Order in your habits, finances, relationships, and thinking does not happen automatically. It must be maintained. But here is the hopeful part. Even though decay is inevitable, growth is also possible within limits through intelligent effort. You cannot stop aging, but you can age better. You cannot eliminate risk, but you can manage it wisely. You cannot control everything, but you can control how you respond. Think of life like gardening rather than engineering. You do not command plants to grow perfectly. You create conditions where growth is more likely. You water, you prune, you remove weeds, you protect from storms. Your body is a garden, your mind is a garden, your life is a garden. Neglect leads to chaos. Care leads to resilience. Now imagine your older self looking back at you today. Would they wish you had chased more thrills, more shortcuts, more impulsive decisions, or would they wish you had been steadier, calmer, and more thoughtful? Your body already knows the answer. It thrives on consistency, not chaos. Let's circle back to that first unsettling question. Why does your body fall apart? Not because the universe is cruel, not because you failed, but because you are a living system in a universe that favors disorder unless effort is applied. That is not depressing. It is clarifying. It tells you that what matters is not perfection, but maintenance, not brilliance, but steadiness, not speed, but patience. And it reveals a deeper truth about being human. You are not meant to dominate reality. You are meant to cooperate with it. Understand its rules, respect its constraints, and work intelligently within them. So when you notice aging, do not fight it with denial or despair. Treat it as feedback. Are you sleeping enough, eating reasonably, moving your body, managing stress, thinking clearly, avoiding obvious stupidity, building habits that compound in your favor? If yes, you are doing about as well as anyone realistically can. If not, the universe will not punish you dramatically. It will simply let entropy do its quiet work. Here is the final reflection. Your body is temporary, but your way of thinking can be enduring. Your physical strength will fade, but your judgment can improve. Your speed will decline, but your wisdom can deepen. Most people chase youth. The wiser path is to build clarity. And perhaps the most important question you can carry forward is simple but powerful. Am I maintaining what matters, or am I drifting? If you ask that honestly, often, and without ego, you are already ahead of most people. Because in a world where everything tends to fall apart, the rarest skill is not brilliance. It is careful, patient, intentional maintenance of your body, your mind, and your